The year was 1998. The heat of summer hung heavy in the air. Inside a maximum security prison, a man plotted his escape. His name, or rather the name he was known by, was Samuel Hayes. Convicted of a crime he claimed he didn't commit, Samuel clung to hope. He yearned for freedom. Every clang of the bars, every clanging cell door fueled his desire. Years had passed since his sentencing, years lost, years stolen. He became a ghost haunting the halls of his own mind. He was forgotten by the outside world, or so he thought.
Samuel knew the truth. Someone was searching for him, someone who believed him, someone who knew the truth of that night. He clung to this knowledge, a lifeline in a sea of despair. This belief fueled his escape.
The night was dark, the moon hidden behind a veil of clouds. It was the perfect night. Samuel, with a pounding heart, put his plan into action. He had studied the routines, memorized the guards' schedules. Tonight, he would be free. A smuggled wrench, a loosened bolt, a heart that wouldn't stop pounding. Every creak of metal sounded deafening in the stillness of the night. He slipped through the shadows, his movements precise. His heart pounded in his ears.
The cold night air hit him like a slap. He was free, but his freedom was a fragile thing. He was a hunted man. He knew the authorities would be relentless. He had to disappear.
He traded his prison garb for clothes acquired from a donation bin. He became a shadow, moving unseen, unnoticed. He boarded a bus, heading north, away from the life that had been stolen from him, away from the bars and the guards. His escape made the news. He saw his face plastered on wanted posters. Fear, a familiar companion, gnawed at him, but he pushed it down. He had to survive. He had to clear his name.
He arrived in a bustling city, anonymous and alone. He chose a new name, a new identity. He would become a ghost, but this time, by choice. He had to disappear. He had to become invisible. His new life had begun, a life on the run.
The city was a labyrinth, a maze of concrete and steel. Samuel, now calling himself David, melted into the crowds. Each face blurred into the next. He was a ghost drifting through the streets. He clung to the edges of society. He became invisible. Days turned into weeks. Weeks bled into months. David found shelter in the shadows. He slept in alleyways, abandoned buildings. He scavenged for food. He lived on the fringes of a world he could no longer be a part of. But he was alive.
Survival became his sole purpose. He found odd jobs, always moving, never staying in one place for too long. He avoided eye contact, kept his head down. He was a shadow, existing in the periphery. He was a ghost, haunting a life he no longer recognized.
Paranoia became his constant companion. Every siren, every police car sent his heart racing.
I learned to blend in, to become invisible. I studied the rhythms of the city, moved with the crowds, an anonymous face in a sea of faces. I was a ghost.
He avoided cameras, mirrors, any reflection of his past life. He paid in cash, spoke little, and asked no questions. He was a phantom, drifting through the city, leaving no trace. He was a whisper in the wind.
I clung to the newspapers, searching for any mention of my escape. But the trail had gone cold. I was a cold case, a forgotten file, a ghost story, whispered in the halls of the prison I had left behind. I was free.
One rainy evening, seeking shelter in a doorway, a voice startled him.
You look like you need some help.
The woman was older, her face etched with kindness. He tensed, his instinct to run, but her eyes held no judgment, only concern.
I mumbled a refusal, but her gentle insistence broke through my defenses. She offered me a warm meal, a place to rest.
He hesitated, years of distrust warring with the longing for human connection. He was a wounded animal, wary of every touch.
I accepted her offer, drawn to her warmth and generosity. Her name was Mary, and she reminded me of my own mother.
He learned she lived alone, her husband long gone. She filled the silence with stories, her voice a soothing balm to his frayed nerves. He felt a flicker of hope. Mary offered him work, odd jobs around her apartment building. He accepted, grateful for the purpose, the normalcy.
I fixed leaky faucets, repaired broken furniture, my hands finding solace in the familiar tasks. I was a craftsman, a builder, a fixer.
He was careful, always maintaining his distance, never revealing his past. But slowly trust began to blossom. He found himself sharing stories, carefully curated memories from his fabricated past. He was an actor, playing a role.
I learned to laugh again, to find moments of joy in the mundane. I helped Mary with groceries, listened to her stories, shared meals at her small kitchen table. I was a part of something, a fragile connection in a world that had forgotten me. I was no longer invisible.
But the past, like a shadow, always loomed. He couldn't outrun his own memories. The crime he was accused of, the faces of the victims haunted his dreams.
I was a prisoner of my own mind, my guilt a constant ache. I clung to the hope that someday, somehow, I could clear my name, that the truth would come to light.
But until then, he lived a double life. David, the handyman, the quiet tenant, the friend, and Samuel, the fugitive, the ghost, the shadow.
One evening, watching the news, a familiar face flashed across the screen. A cold dread washed over me. The case had been reopened. My past was reaching out, threatening to shatter the fragile peace I had built. I was a hunted man once more.
Years passed, turning into a blur of seasons and stolen moments. David found solace in routine, in the rhythm of his new life. He continued to work for Mary, his presence a comfort to her aging heart. He had become a fixture in her life, a surrogate son filling the silence of her days.
One chilly afternoon, drawn by a need for escape, I found myself standing outside a quaint bookstore. The warm glow spilling from its windows beckoned me inside, promising a temporary reprieve from the weight of my secrets.
He was a man drawn to stories, their power to transport him to other worlds a welcome escape. He browsed the shelves, his fingers trailing across the spines of countless books, each one holding a world waiting to be discovered.
I was a man starved for knowledge, for connection, for a glimpse into lives lived beyond the confines of my own. I was a ghost, seeking solace in the written word.
A voice soft and melodic startled him from his thoughts.
Can I help you find something?
A woman, her eyes sparkling with intelligence, stood before him. He mumbled a response, his gaze drawn to the book in her hands, a worn copy of his favorite novel.
She smiled, sensing his hesitation, and launched into a passionate summary of the book, her words flowing like music.
He found himself drawn to her enthusiasm, her genuine love for stories mirroring his own. He was a man starved for connection, and her passion ignited a flicker of warmth within him.
I revealed my own admiration for the author, our shared love for storytelling forming an unexpected bridge between us. I learned her name was Sarah, and she worked at the bookstore, a haven for bookworms and dreamers alike.
He found himself returning, week after week, drawn to her warmth and their shared love for stories. Section 3. The Weight of Unspoken Truths. As weeks melted into months, their friendship deepened.
I found myself confiding in Sarah, sharing carefully curated snippets of my fabricated past. I was an actor, playing a role, careful not to reveal the truth that haunted my every waking moment. I was a ghost, yearning for connection yet terrified of exposure.
He cherished their time together, their conversations a lifeline in the sea of his solitude. They explored hidden bookshops, debated plot twists over steaming mugs of coffee, and lost themselves in worlds spun from ink and imagination.
I was a man starved for normalcy, and Sarah's presence filled a void I had long ignored.
But the weight of his unspoken truth pressed down on him, a constant reminder of the chasm that separated them. He yearned to confess, to unburden his soul, but fear held him captive. He was a prisoner of his own making, trapped in a cage of deceit built to protect a secret that threatened to destroy him. Section 4. A Brush with the Past. One evening, while walking Sarah home, a police car cruised past, its siren a jarring reminder of his past.
I froze, my pulse quickening, the familiar fear gripping me like a vice. I saw the question in Sarah's eyes, her brow furrowed with concern at my sudden change in demeanor. I brushed it off, fabricating a story about a troubled past I had long left behind.
He said it was just a rough patch from years ago. I believed him, but something felt off.
She seemed to accept his explanation, but the encounter left him shaken. He realized the precariousness of his situation, the ever-present threat of exposure, casting a long shadow over his newfound happiness.
I couldn't outrun my past forever. It lurked around every corner, a specter waiting to drag me back into the darkness. I was a hunted man, forever looking over my shoulder, my freedom a fragile illusion shattered by the wail of a siren.
Section 5. The Walls Close In. The next day, a news report flickered across the television at Mary's apartment, sending a chill down his spine.
The case had been reopened, new evidence coming to light. I saw my own face, younger and full of fear, plastered across the screen, a stark reminder of the life I had left behind. Panic welled up inside me, threatening to consume me. I couldn't stay here, not anymore. I had to disappear again, vanish before the walls closed in.
But what about Mary? What about Sarah? Could he bear to leave them, to inflict the pain of his sudden absence upon the two people who had shown him kindness?
I was torn, my loyalty to my survival instincts battling against the burgeoning love I felt for these two women. I was a man trapped between two worlds, the past I couldn't outrun, and the present I couldn't bear to lose. He paced Mary's living room, his mind racing, his heart pounding against his ribs like a trapped bird. Flight or fight. The instinct to run, to disappear into the anonymity of the city, warred with the desire to stay, to protect the women he cared for. He thought of Sarah, her laughter, her warmth, the way she looked at him, her eyes filled with trust and affection. Could he abandon her, leave her with nothing but unanswered questions and the ghost of a man she thought she knew?
The decision gnawed at him, a heavy weight settling in the pit of his stomach. He knew he couldn't outrun his past forever. But could he bear to face it, to risk destroying the fragile peace he had built? Days turned into sleepless nights. David wrestled with his dilemma. He couldn't stay, not with the authorities closing in, but the thought of leaving Mary and Sarah, the only family he had known in years, filled him with a bone-deep ache. He knew Mary wouldn't understand. She was too trusting, too innocent. He couldn't risk her safety by revealing his secret.
But Sarah, he felt, deserved the truth. She deserved to know the man she had befriended, the man she had allowed into her heart.
He decided to write her a letter, pouring out his soul onto the page. He wrote of his past, his fears, his love for her. He couldn't bear the thought of her hearing his story from someone else, his truth, twisted by the media's relentless hunger for a story. He left the letter for Sarah at the bookstore, tucked between the pages of her favorite novel. A silent plea for understanding, a confession whispered into the void. He prayed she would forgive him, that their connection, forged in the shared love for stories, would withstand the weight of his deception.
He packed a small bag, the weight of his past heavier than ever. He left Mary a note, a simple message of gratitude for her kindness, her friendship. He couldn't bring himself to say goodbye in person. The pain of leaving her, the guilt of his deception, was too much to bear.
He slipped out of the apartment building, melting into the pre-dawn darkness. He was a ghost once more, fading back into the shadows, leaving behind the only semblance of normalcy he had known in years.
He moved from city to city, state to state, always looking over his shoulder. The fear, a constant companion, never truly left him. He followed the news, his heart sinking with each update on the reopened case. His past was a relentless pursuer, its shadow stretching across the miles.
I took on odd jobs, living a nomadic existence. I tried to outrun my past, but it clung to me like a shroud. I was a fugitive, living on borrowed time. I knew my freedom was an illusion, a fragile bubble waiting to be burst.
He clung to the memory of Sarah, her laughter, her kindness, the way she made him believe for a fleeting moment that he could be someone else, someone worthy of love. He wondered if she had received his letter, if she understood. He clung to the hope that she had forgiven him. One day, his carefully constructed world began to crumble. He was working at a diner in a small town, trying to blend in, to disappear into the mundane rhythm of everyday life. He had grown complacent, lulled into a false sense of security. He was clearing tables, his mind miles away, when a familiar voice shattered his fragile peace.
I looked up, my blood turning to ice. A man sat at a booth by the window, his face etched in my memory. It was a detective, one of the officers who had investigated my case years ago.
The detective's eyes met his, a flicker of recognition passing between them. He froze, his breath catching in his throat. He knew in that instant that his time was up. His past had finally caught up with him. The detective, his eyes narrowed with suspicion, slowly approached him.
Excuse me, I know you from somewhere.
David's mind raced, desperately searching for an escape, an explanation, anything to buy him some time. But his years on the run had dulled his reflexes.
I hesitated for a fraction of a second too long, a flicker of panic betraying my carefully crafted facade.
The detective's eyes hardened.
Samuel Hayes, you're under arrest.
David's heart sank. He had known this day would come, but knowing and accepting were two vastly different things. His carefully constructed life, the fragile peace he had built, crumbled around him like dust. The diner faded away, replaced by the sterile confines of an interrogation room. He sat across from the detective, the weight of his past crushing him. He knew there was no escape, no more running. The truth, like a caged beast, had finally been unleashed.
I confess everything. I escaped from prison, lived on the run for years, and became David. Mary was kind to me, and I found solace in her presence. And Sarah, I loved her so much.
Go on.
I need to see Sarah one last time. I need to explain, to apologize, to see her face one final time before I face the consequences.
He cooperated with the authorities, his only request to see Sarah one last time. He needed to explain, to apologize, to see her face one final time before he was swallowed whole by the consequences of his actions. The reunion was bittersweet. Sarah, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger, hurt and understanding, listened as he poured out his heart. He saw the conflict in her face, the battle between her love for him and the betrayal she felt.
I don't ask for your forgiveness, Sarah. I know I hurt you, shattered your trust, but I want you to know I never stopped loving you.
It's hard to understand, but I see it in your eyes. The connection, the love you shared, it's still there, isn't it?
As he was led away, the weight of his past heavier than ever, he carried the memory of her gaze, a bittersweet reminder of the life he had almost had, the love he had almost held within his grasp. The courtroom was a cold, sterile place. The air was thick with anticipation. David, his real name, Samuel Hayes, sat at the defendant's table, his heart heavy with a mixture of dread and a strange sense of relief. His secret was out, his past laid bare for all to see.
The trial was a media frenzy. Cameras flashed, capturing every detail of his haggard face, his weary eyes. The prosecution painted him as a monster, a manipulator who had escaped justice and lived a lie for decades.
They presented their evidence, each piece a nail in the coffin of his newfound life. His lawyer, a young woman with a steely gaze and a fierce determination to uncover the truth, argued that he was a victim of circumstance, a man wrongly accused who had only wanted to clear his name. She presented evidence of his good character during his years on the run, the relationships he had forged, the kindness he had shown. The courtroom became a stage where Samuel's life was dissected, analyzed and judged. Witnesses from his past testified, their memories hazy, their versions of events often contradictory. He saw the doubt in the jurors' eyes, the weight of his past casting a long shadow over any possibility of redemption.
He is a kind and gentle man, the David I knew. He has done so much good, even while facing his own suffering.
Mary, her voice trembling with emotion, testified on his behalf. Her words were a testament to the life he had built, the good he had done in the face of his own suffering. Her testimony brought tears to his eyes, a reminder of the love he had found in the most unexpected of places. But it was Sarah's absence that spoke volumes. He had refused to drag her into the trial, to force her to relive the pain of his deception. He knew that her absence spoke louder than any words, a testament to the depth of his betrayal. The jury deliberated for days, their decision hanging in the balance. Samuel waited, his fate in their hands. He knew that no matter the outcome, his life would never be the same. He had lived a lie for so long that the truth felt like a foreign language, a melody he had forgotten how to sing.
The truth, it's like a melody I've forgotten how to sing.
The verdict, when it finally came, was a mixed bag. Not guilty of the original crime, but guilty of escaping custody. He was free, but his freedom was a double-edged sword. He had spent decades running from his past, only to realize that the truth, however painful, was the only path to true liberation. He walked out of the courtroom a free man, but the weight of his past still clung to him. He had escaped the bars of prison, but the bars he had built around his own heart remained. The world outside the courtroom felt both familiar and strange. Time had moved on, leaving him stranded in a past he could never fully reclaim. He returned to Mary, seeking solace in her familiar presence.
It's good to be back, Mary.
She welcomed him back into her life, her love and understanding a balm to his wounded soul. He visited Sarah, hoping for a chance to explain, to apologize, to find some semblance of closure, but she was gone. She had moved on, leaving behind only a trace of her scent, a ghost of her laughter in the empty bookstore where they had first met.
She's gone. I lost her.
He realized that some wounds cut too deep to heal, some betrayals too profound to forgive. He had lost her, and in losing her, he had lost a part of himself.
I spent the years following my release trying to rebuild my life, to find meaning and purpose in the wreckage of my past. I dedicated myself to helping others who had been wrongly convicted, using my experience to fight for justice, to give voice to the voiceless. I found solace in my work, a way to atone for my mistakes, to make amends for the life I had taken, the life I had lived in the shadows. But the guilt, the regret, never truly left me. They lingered like ghosts, haunting the edges of my dreams. I learned that redemption was not a destination, but a journey, a constant striving for forgiveness, for peace. It was a path paved with good intentions and shadowed by the ghosts of my past.
Samuel's story became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the far-reaching consequences of our choices, the enduring power of the past to shape our present. It sparked debates about justice, about redemption, about the very nature of truth. Some saw him as a victim, a man who had been dealt a cruel hand and forced to make impossible choices. Others saw him as a fugitive, a man who had broken the law and evaded responsibility for his actions. But no matter the interpretation, his story served as a stark reminder that the past is never truly gone. It lingers, a spectre haunting the present, shaping the choices we make, the people we become.
I lived out my days haunted by the what-ifs, the roads not taken, the life I might have had if things had been different. I carried the weight of my past like a heavy cloak, a constant reminder of the price of freedom, the fragility of trust. I never forgot Mary, her unwavering kindness, a bright spot in the darkness of my memories. I often visited her grave, leaving wildflowers on her tombstone, a silent promise to keep her memory alive. I never stopped thinking of Sarah, the echo of her laughter, a bittersweet melody in my heart. I hoped that she had found happiness, that she had forgiven me, even if I couldn't forgive myself.
In the end, Samuel Hayes died a free man, surrounded by the people he had touched, the lives he had changed. His story, once whispered in hushed tones, became a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the enduring power of hope, even in the face of overwhelming darkness. His life, a tapestry woven from threads of love, loss and redemption, served as a reminder that even in the depths of our despair, even when burdened by the weight of our past, we have the capacity for change, for growth, for love. And though he was gone, his story lived on, a whisper in the wind, a reminder that even in death we are not forgotten, that our lives, however flawed, however fleeting, leave an indelible mark on the world.